All things come from you, O Lord, and from your own have we given you. In the name of the one holy and triune God, amen. Please be seated. For those of us who have lived through more than a couple of Lenten seasons, we have probably at least begun to form a default posture or disposition or attitude toward Lent. It starts to well up in us about a week before the Lenten season arrives. Some folks express a deep love and appreciation for the season of Lent. And others, many of us actually, carry forward kind of dread into the season of Lent. It's formed over years of traditions and experiences. I know my first Episcopal church used to make us say Rite One for 5 weeks in a row for Lent. And I like Rite One, but it didn't feel like they were doing it because I liked it. These kinds of experiences happen for us over time. And then we get to those days before Lent and we feel our blood pressure just rising a little bit, thinking of all the drudgery and self-denial and deprivation that has been thrust upon us over those years, expecting more of the same in the season to come. For many of us, Lent is just a big season of no. And we've been told explicitly or implicitly that this strict observance of the no's of Lent is obligation to God that basically buys us our free pass for the rest of the year. I want us to consider today Lent as a big yes, a time for gratitude, works of goodness, generosity, and growth. In the Eastern Church, what we often call the Orthodox Church, Ukrainian Orthodox Church, the Russian Orthodox Church, the Greek Orthodox Church, the Coptic Church, oftentimes Lent is referred to as the tithe of the year. The tithe of the year. There's early precedent in the Bible of the faithful giving of a tithe of possessions, 10% of all that the faithful own, goods, crops, money, all offered to God through temple worship or giving alms or by setting aside time for worship and rest. This concept of tithing shows up in the book of Genesis for the first time. Abram returns with his men from a successful battle. They had been encroached on all sides by many kingdoms, enemies against them, and in defending themselves, they are met with success. Abram returns to the king, the mysterious king of Salem, Melchizedek, and makes a gift of a tenth of all the spoils of those battles as a thank offering, as an expression of gratitude. But in that story, Abram doesn't keep the rest. One of the kings that has been defeated says, well, I guess you'll want to take the rest of these spoils. And Abram says, no, I don't want you to get any credit for the riches that will come my way in the future. You can have it all back. The tithe is never seen as a tax. It's not a percentage paid for the right to hang on to or hoard everything else. No, it's more of an offering of gratitude, an intention to remember and honor God first as the source of all we have. So it is, I believe, in the season of Lent. Not so much a tax on our year as a time to make gift of all we have to God. Today in our reading from Deuteronomy, there is no emphasis on those numbers, 10%, any of that. But the emphasis is on the number one, as in honoring God first. Here we drop in near the end of a very long speech being delivered by Moses to God's people, right on their cusp of entering into the land that God has promised them. Moses is declaring to the people a code by which they are to live in the promised land. He's spelling out the common values, norms, and rules they will hold together in order to have a healthy community. Moses is getting the people ready to cross over into their inheritance after 40 years of wandering in the wilderness. And the people are instructed that when they begin to glean the first harvest, they will engage a brief liturgy, recalling God saving them from slavery, leading them through the wilderness, and bringing them to inhabit a fruitful land. They will take some of the early produce of their harvest and make it an offering to the priest. And they will recount the story of going from slavery and scarcity and wilderness wandering into God's provision, saying these words: God brought us to this place and gave us this land, a land full of milk and honey. So now I am bringing the early produce of the fertile ground that you, Lord, have given me. Now, whether a tithe of the year, Lent, and Holy Week actually add up together to roughly 10% of the days of a year, whether a tithe or more generally a gift of early fruits or first fruits, there's a powerful connection with this idea of our beginning in a new year, including for us this year, our beginning as a parish. This is our first year together, and we're 7 days in. We can engage this spiritual season of Lent and set intentions for how we will honor God and give thanks in it. Because how we do this, how we engage in this season of Lent, it will set the tone for how we face everything else, whether heights of mountains or depths of valleys, whether joys or sorrows, whether scarcity or abundance. How we engage this season of Lent will set the tone for how we will engage everything else that comes to us in the days ahead. I love this idea of Lent as a tithe, or I love it more as the idea of the first offering of our time, the first offering of our year. We can set aside this season as an offering of thanks and honor for all God has seen us through, all the times we've known God's love and faithfulness in our lives, and for the faith to trust God will be with us in whatever comes in the time ahead. It can be a season of yes, a season of yes. As a parish, together we can say yes to setting aside this time to engage with one another in worship, in fellowship, and in service. There are Lenten opportunities. There's the weekly Wednesday soup and study, a chance to come around a simple meal together and to consider the truths of God. Or there's our multi-generational Sunday school offering that Christy Hudlow began leading today, 9 a.m. Or next Saturday, you can come out at 8 or 9 a.m. and pitch in for a couple of hours, picking up trash and trimming bushes and just taking care of this wonderful campus that God has given us. Or you can clean out your own house and bring some of those unused items to donate for our March 26th rummage sale. And then you can show up and help serve our community on that day. These are some ways as a parish community that we can set aside this season to thank God for bringing us this far by faith. We don't have to do all of this Actually, we don't have to do any of this. Let's be really blunt about that. But if we choose to engage, we can maybe find a space between what we feel like doing over here and what's just too much over here. We can push ourselves to go beyond comfort zones, make a little bit of a sacrifice of our time, energy, and also continue with good practices of taking care of ourselves, the people we love, with rest and healthy eating and time with those who are closest to us. I know some of you have exciting vacation plans for the summer. You've shared them with me. And after a couple of years of wondering if we'll ever get a vacation again, you're very excited about being gone for a week or two or a month or two. I have a couple of weeks set aside myself in the summer. Lent offers us a time before the summer, before we go our ways, take care of ourselves and those we love, go and see and take care of those we love who have been too far away from us for way too long. It offers us a time as a parish right now to be together, to invest in gratitude, in works of goodness, in generosity, and in growth. And of course, this principle works in other circles too, in our private devotion and in any community that means a lot to us. Families of origin and families of choice, service groups, card clubs, supper groups. Wherever we have found meaningful connection with others, Lent can be a time to say yes with thankful hearts and spend extra time giving and serving and fellowshipping and growing. I want to say that Lent does not have to be a drudgery or a miserable season or deprivation that some think it must be. Lent, which actually means spring, can be our spring, our season of coming alive, coming into bloom. The disciplines of Lent might be seen as acting out what life as a Christian should be all year long. Life of gratitude and grounding in God's goodness and generosity toward others. So my friends, in this season of Lent, let's offer the first fruits of this new year as a people, as a parish. Let us give God these 40 days of gratitude, this tithe of our year, and our works of goodness, and our generosity with one another, generosity of spirit and resources. It's time to grow and come alive. We remember that God is our source of life and blessing, and God has been with us all along, and we are blessed to be a blessing. All things come from you, O God, and from your own have we given you. Amen.